Hi, first grade, it's Mrs. Wood. I'm so excited that I get to come to you and see some of your faces and you guys get to see me. You're going to see me every day doing your reading lessons. So starting today and through next week, we're going to be learning about something, making connections. So I want you to stop and think about that. When you hear me say the word connection, what do you think of? Oh, I heard a lot of really good answers. When I think of the word connections, I think of something you have probably all played with or seen before. Does anyone know what these are? Right, they're Legos. When I think of connection, I think of a Lego because they connect to each other. So if we look at this word connections, we see the word connect in there. And when something connects, it means that we put it together. So when I make a connection or I hear that word, I think of a Lego. Now, when they're all on their own, these connections, these Lego pieces, they don't really make anything. I have to start putting them together until it starts to make sense. So here's some Legos that I've been playing with, and I started to make a car. And as I add more things and more Legos, I can start to make my car stronger and look more like a car. It starts to make more sense than just having a bunch of random pieces of Legos. So as we learn about connections, I want you to keep in mind these Legos and how they connect to each other so that things start to make sense. So when we talk about making connections and we want things to connect together, we think of what something reminds us of. So have you ever been somewhere and something happened and you thought, hey, that reminds me of when this happened to me? Maybe when you've been at home the last couple of weeks, you've been watching a TV show and something happens in that TV show and you think, oh, hey, that reminds me of when we went to the zoo, or that reminds me of the time I went to Kings Island. Or maybe you're thinking about, I remember when I went there, or I remember when my baby sister was born, or things like that. And it also a connection is when you see something that's the same as something else. So a connection just means that you are relating it, it's connecting, and it's helping your brain to understand what you're doing. Well, what does this have to do with reading? Well, connections are something that help us understand what an author is trying to say. You probably don't realize this, but whenever you read or you write or you're watching TV or you're playing games, your brain is making tons of connections. So what's happening is your brain is saying, oh, this makes sense because I've done this before and I've been here and I've seen this. And so it's all coming together to make sense in your brain. So I have a book that we're going to read called David Gets in Trouble. And when I read this book, I can make connections, and I bet a lot of you can too. So before we start reading, I want you to get out your packet for day 1, and I want you to turn to the page that looks like this, that says Making Connections. There's 2 of them. One you're going to use right now while we read this book, and you're going to make a connection. And then you're going to save the other one, and I'll tell you more about what you're going to do with that after the video. So go ahead. You'll need a pencil or something to write with, and you're making connections. If you need to pause the video so you can go get it, you can do that now. Alright, so everyone has their packet. I'm going to put mine right up here because I will be using mine in just a few minutes. Alright, and so we're going to read this book. It's called David Gets in Trouble, and it was written by David Shannon. I'm not going to read the whole book. I'm just going to read a few pages. When David gets in trouble, he always says, "No, it's not my fault." I didn't mean to. So I can make a connection here to what I think is going on because I can see that he is on a skateboard. And my connection is that the skateboard looks like it's running into this. And I know when things run into tables, they like to fall over. So I'm understanding that David Shannon is telling us here that David didn't mean to knock over the table. it was an accident. Oh, I can remember a time and make a connection when my cousin was playing outside in her backyard and she was throwing this ball up against the side of the house and she missed the side and hit the window and it broke through just like David. Do I have to? Oh, this is one that reminds me of something that happens with my son, Jacob. Now, Jacob's only 1 year old, but he loves to eat. He'll eat almost anything you put in front of him. But the other day, we gave him some hard-boiled eggs, and it was the first time he had the yellow yolk part inside, and he kept spitting it out and throwing it, and he did not want to eat it. So when I look at this page as a mom, I can make a connection of how Jacob threw his eggs and didn't want to eat it. So I'm going to use my making connection sheet here to draw a picture of what it reminds me of. Now this page has a spot for you to draw a connection, and it also has a spot for you to write. Today we're only going to be drawing pictures, so don't worry about the words. So I'm going to draw a picture here of little baby Jacob, and I'm going to draw his plate and some eggs on here. And, oh, I forgot his face. I want it to look real. He has just a little bit of hair on the top of his head. And so I'm going to throw, he has a sad face. I'm going to show a picture of some eggs on the floor. And so what this looks like then, here's my picture. I'm not a great artist, but that's okay. But I can make an understanding of what happened with David because I understand what happens with Jacob. So here's Jacob. He has his plate and he's throwing all these eggies on the floor because he does not want to eat them. So as I read the next few pages of this book, I want you to think about if there's something that you make a connection to. Does it remind you of something? Do you remember where you've been because of something that happens? Or is it the same as something that happened to you? So I'm going to read just a few of these pages, and when you make a connection, you draw a picture in your packet. I forgot. He has no pants on. Oh no. My dog ate my homework. Oh, I want you to remember, has there ever been a time you didn't have your homework done? Why wasn't it done? That's a connection. I couldn't help it. Here's David. He's making a silly face in a class picture. Have you ever been silly when you shouldn't? Think about that. Remember when that happened. That's a connection. I was so hungry. David's eating Rufus's dog treats. Hopefully you don't have a connection to that one. Have you ever eaten something maybe you shouldn't have, or know someone who did? What happened? That's a connection that will help you understand. So those are just a few examples from the book David Gets in Trouble of how you can make connections. So connections will help you all throughout life, but especially when you're reading. When you're reading things, stop and think about things that you remember, things that it reminds you of that happened in your life, and you'll be able to make those connections so that the book starts to make sense. So today what you're going to do in your packet is after you turn off the video, you're going to turn to that other page and you're going to draw about a connection you made. It could be another one from this book, or you can choose to use it in one of the books that you're reading today in your independent reading time. And I want you to draw a picture. You can write the words if you want to, or you can just draw a picture. Today I just need you to draw a picture. All right? So I'll see you guys tomorrow, and we're going to keep talking about connections and how connections can help us to become better readers. See you guys later.